Improvising a one-shot.
Let's set the scene. It's game night, your table is ready, your players are ready, their dice are polished, and they are eager to dive into this new adventure. But you've got nothing prepared. And now you're staring at the table, feeling the pressure mount. So what do? You improvise. Today, we're talking about running a TTRPG one-shot with zero prep. And of course, you can look at it from the perspective of if you don't have anything prepped, well, this is how you save yourself. Yes and no, I don't think they're just that. I think they're much more. They are their own art form, and certainly they're their own style of play. In one-shots, it is very important to remember that what for a longer campaign is just a quest is enough to be the whole story of a one-shot. Even saving a goblin princess from a dreadnought can be a very epic tale. I mean, it sounds like a very epic tale already, if it's structured and paced the right way. So if your player's actions and your imagination are a boundless river, your role as the GM is to shape it and give it direction. Remember, time is not on your side in a one-shot. You only got a few hours to tell the complete story. Personally, I like running open world-ish one-shots that last about 3.5 hours, not counting the character creation. For something like that, I usually suggest pre-gens. At least when it comes to stats, mechanics, I mean, let the players customize their personality and their backgrounds and their quirks, and find a good reason for the characters to know each other. So let's talk about structure. For one-shots, I loosely follow the 3-act structure, and don't click away, I know everybody says that, but I loosely follow it. I start with individual prologues for each player. They last about 5 to 10 minutes each, and yes, I keep my eyes on the clock the whole time. So I would start by asking a random question to a random player. So where are you now? What part of your life do you want us to explore? And this can be any type of scene, a conversation, a chase scene with a couple of die rolls. One player might be tending to the family's shop when they overhear a suspicious conversation. Another one might be fleeing from guards after being accused of theft. The third one could be reminiscing about a past event while visiting, I don't know, a graveyard. I mean, it's not just flavor, it's not just them experiencing the world and like building their characters. It helps me figure out and collect information about the world, about NPCs, get some ideas, get some hooks. And the cool thing here is that they are all coming straight from the player's imagination. If you want to know more about how I structure session zeros, for example, to achieve something like this in a long-form campaign, I do have a video on that as well, and I will put it somewhere around here, anywhere, and in the description. After the prologue, I usually begin slowly. I arrange for them to meet, make it cozy a bit, just like they do in those horror movies that have teenagers partying before the real horror starts. And then I start thinking about entangling the characters in a conflict. And of course, sometimes, usually, players will naturally throw themselves into conflicts, but other times you might need to give them a little push. And if they are hesitant, ask them directly. If you were this character, what would your ultimate goal be right now? It's a cheap trick, but sometimes players will be happy that their ideas turn into quests and plotlines, so if you're out of ideas, it's worth a try. Another approach is to have NPCs provoke the players. You don't need to know why the NPCs are acting this way. Let the players' suspicions guide the story and guide you in a way. And anytime you hear them theorize about the NPCs' motivations, listen carefully. Their speculations might turn into truths. They're basically giving you the direction without you needing to plan it all in advance. Another thing you can do is just direct the player's attention onto anything. The statue in the middle of the town is glowing. They will ask why, and you don't know, so must be the goblins. Usually I like to throw in an easy encounter somewhere inside the first 45 minutes of this phase as well. I like to do it straight at the beginning sometimes. It's easy to connect all the characters if they're connecting to an encounter. You can throw anything at them. You will figure out the reason why on the fly. So fire elementals, goblins again, skeletons, zombies, whatever beast you find in the monster manual, you can pretty much throw it at them and then figure out why as the session is going. I call this phase the investigation phase, as both the players and you, the GM, are actively gathering information. The next phase is where your players have figured out what they want to do. They are taking action, they are pursuing their goals, and this can be anything. This can be like planning a heist. They do have a heist video, I will link to it somewhere here. Or it can be exploring a dangerous place, a dungeon, retrieving some treasure, or whatever this thing here is. Anyways, this is where the majority of role-playing and dice rolling and skill checks and problem-solving in general will happen. So make sure your players have a handful of dice at their fingertips at all times. And then we reach the climax. For me, and I mean for everyone, otherwise it wouldn't be called a climax, right? It's the most dramatic and fun part of the session. This is where we ramp everything up. We turn the volume on the music to the maximum, stand up, roll the dice in the open for maximum dramatic tension. This is where I throw in more threat, where life and death become synonymous. This is where you add all the special effects. Oh my god. And this is where the players should uncover all the secrets. Yes, all of them. Why? Because there's no need for them. If you're almost done, it's not like you're gonna have a slow burn or anything. You just want the biggest crescendo possible here. So they resolve the mysteries and they face their final challenge. Weirdly enough, even as the GM, this is where things start to make sense, almost as if the dice and the players were filling in the gaps all along, which is such a satisfying feeling. And of course, this is the place where if you have any special encounter design ideas that will make things more interesting, this is where you use them. And when the threat is finally removed and your players emerge victorious, I would assume, at the end of the climax is where you might want to leave a little cliffhanger. I leave around 20 minutes to resolve things in the game. I do love an outro that is in the shape of a narrator, sometimes a narrator character. I have a video about narrator characters. You can check that out somewhere here or in the description as well. And sometimes the players will jump in and add things to this speech. For example, my character has opened the tavern, and then you have the narrator going like, the tavern called the stubborn duck, blah, 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 you know, that sort of stuff. This might be an even better place for a cliffhanger. I mean, this is by no means how I run all of my sessions and how I time all of my sessions. And of course, it doesn't always work the way I want, and that is fine. Practice makes perfect, and sometimes by breaking this form, we have sessions that are the most engaging. There is a ton of different techniques for this, and one good approach is from Index Card RPG, and take a look at this graph. I would say it has a bit more steps, and note that they can be moved around so that the players can never figure out your pattern and then anticipate. I always hate this part. Improvisation starts with trusting yourself. Your brain is far from empty. Think about it. How many times have you visualized a medieval town, a bustling port, or a shady tavern? You don't need to prep these details because they are already in your head. Just don't overthink it. Instead, treat it like a word association game. Imagine a medieval town street. Are you imagining it? A medieval town. See? What do you see? Maybe cobblestones, carts loaded with goods, people negotiating prices. What do you hear? Hooves cracking, a bard strumming a lute. What do you smell? Bread baking? Smoke from a smithy? Now, describe those things to your players. Keep it simple. Let their questions guide you. The things they ask. Are there guards around? Or do I see a shady alley somewhere? Those will point you towards what's important to them. And you don't know the answers to those questions? Just ask the dice. 1, 2, 3 is a yes, 4, 5, 6 is a no. I will link to Bandit's Kit video going over Oracle dice and other ways to do this in the description. During these moments, some other fun, cool, or scary, or even mundane things will pop into your head, but they don't deserve the screen time right away because your description is already too long or they don't fit into the scene. For example, a street performer juggling knives, a tavern sign that is one wind blow away from falling down, a purple frog the size of a dog, why not? Maybe a regular cat, a flying coat, people playing chess in front of a store, a merchant haggling loudly, or a kid running after a loose kite. Write these down. I call them narrative nuggets, yeah, a fascinatingly stupid name, but they are important and we'll get back to them. So you might say, okay, I can find my way around that, but don't I need a map of the city to keep track of where everything is? Well, yes and no. You're improvising, so in time you'll learn how to improvise this as well. When it comes to drawing out a world map, it's pretty simple. Let's say your players are in a city. Grab a piece of paper or something like this and sketch out some lines. These lines are now your main roads. Maybe you can add another color or a wiggly line to represent a river or something. And yeah, now you draw just some rectangles, like so, maybe small ones here and here and here. I mean, you would put a bit more work into it, but this paints the whole picture, no pun intended. Just scatter some rectangles around. These are your key locations. And now, as your players explore, you assign meaning to these shapes. This one is a tavern. Now, this one, yes, it's a church. And what about this one? Well, this one is a potion shop. And I know, this doesn't always work. Sometimes your players will ask concrete questions like, what do I see in this street? In that case, just do the same. Assign functions to nearby buildings on the fly and describe that. Okay, there is a blacksmith hammering away there. Bakery. There's a bakery there. And yes, here we will put a temple to an obscure god. Players don't need to see this map. This is for your own orientation and consistency. But let's say you want to make locations more unique. That's when you start asking the question, what wouldn't normally be here? For example, your players walk into a tavern and, Mama Duck, and they see a loose duck running around. Maybe the tavern owner keeps the duck as a mascot. Maybe it's a gimmick. Whoever pets the duck without getting bitten gets a free drink. Then from that, you can take it a step further and name the tavern after the duck. So what about the Stubborn Duck Inn? It has a certain ring to it, doesn't it? And now we ask, what is on the menu? Well, they either sell the best duck meat you ever tried, or they don't sell it at all. They refuse to sell it because of their love of ducks. See how these little questions snowball into something that's memorable. That is how you breathe life into the world, one detail at a time. Now with structure in place, quick tips. Remember narrative nuggets? When players are just walking around, drop some of those nuggets into the scene and see how they react. Number 2, don't use phrases like, we don't have enough time, or let's move things along. Find a way to interrupt the players and make it feel natural. Get them pickpocketed, confused for another adventuring party, for better or for worse. Find a way to connect this to what they are looking for. Number 3, don't hold onto information. If they need something to progress, find a sneaky way to give it to them so they feel like they did good. Tip number 4, repetition legitimizes. What this means is that some symbols and motifs that are repeating might end up with a meaning on their own. So they have no meaning, and if they are repeating enough times, people tend to give them meaning. What if a black feather shows up everywhere the players go? They might ask around about it, and they'll have some ideas why. You as the GM should go with your instincts and don't forget to listen to their theories. We kind of have the whole podcast episode dedicated just to this topic, so form, content, and leitmotifs, aka repetition. Another good tip is whenever you're vague or you have NPCs that are unpredictable, that is a good way to leave gaps for you as the GM to fill in later. I like to use unreliable NPCs, so some of them seem crazy or fun and wacky in certain ways. Others are scary and would blackmail the NPCs. And both are good ways to set up unpredictability. Maybe one crazy NPC reappears in the climax to help the PCs. Maybe one of those NPCs is the villain. It's important to remember, if you start feeling overwhelmed, you can always take a 5-minute break. It's fine, 10-minute break, whatever. Recollect your thoughts, Google some things, get some inspiration, and then continue playing. Last tip of the day, players are here to have fun. So toss the ball to them as much as possible, keep the descriptions concise, play off of what they do, and don't forget, the camera follows the players. I have your file here, and I must tell you, you have a GM over prepper syndrome. It's gonna be alright. If you're getting into one-shots, a good one-shot doesn't need to have epic tales. It can just be players' shenanigans, an encounter or two, and a memorable climax. That's more than enough to create an exciting and satisfying session. Sometimes, even just talking in character is fun for the players. To be fair, you don't need to prep that much. Okay, I did say we're gonna improvise it all, but if you have 10 minutes, or even better 30 minutes to prep something, what do you prep? Well, I don't really know what that is for you, but I can give you an advice to prep what you find hard to remember. For me, that is narrative nuggets, these little things, and names of people and places. I would also maybe have a cool mechanic or concept that I wanted to try out written down as a reminder, but I don't need to have all the fluff around it. So yeah, it's not much. And if you're doing this in a world you know, have your world notes at hand. Write down some important names and facts, maybe factions, things like that. Again, things you can't remember. I'm sure you will feel like you can't remember anything and you have to write everything down, but trust me. No, trust yourself. Just try running a few one-shots like this and you will know exactly what those notes need to have, and it will fit on an index card. To be honest, I always feel like my improvise sessions are garbage. They're not good enough, they're messy, chaotic, and far from my polished and planned and campaigns that I imagine in my head. I kind of hate them sometimes. But my players, they always reassure me and say that those spontaneous sessions feel the most sincere, the most believable in a way. There is so much more to explore when it comes to improv and improvising one-shots and of course improvising whole campaigns. So if you'd like to see a full series, let me know in the comments. And of course, if you have enjoyed this collection of moving images and pixels explaining things to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. And joining our Discord if you want to continue this conversation. And of course, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys rock. Well, hope to see you all somewhere in the interwebs, but until then, I bid you
Farewell, keepers.